FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
What's going on in the world? Where are we heading towards? Do we have a whole bunch of alliances that we know nothing about that conceivably could get us into World War III or World War IV, depending upon whom you talk to? Well, let's talk with John Rubino of dollarcollapse.com and find out. John, how are you?
Hey, Kerry. Good. How are you?
All right. So we've got this situation unwinding in the Ukraine. The U.S., as usual, sticking its nose in other people's business, not only where we have no business of our own, but we don't really know what we're doing particularly well either.
That is one of the general themes of our foreign policy, isn't it? We blunder into places like the Middle East comes to mind, where we don't understand who wants what and who cares about what and who will be a friend or an enemy. And we just start laying down rules based on what we think is in our interest. And it blows up in our faces. You know, most of our current problems with Islamic extremism can be traced back to the mistakes that we made in the Middle East in decades past. And it looks like we're repeating the pattern with Ukraine. Now, we don't understand what's going on over there. We don't know who the players are. And yet, we seem to feel like we have the right to an opinion and to involve ourselves in it. And so now, without going into too many details, it's been in all the papers. Part of Ukraine wants to join Russia, and the remaining piece of Ukraine is opposing it, and Russia's got soldiers on the ground and everything. And we are imposing sanctions on a lot of Russians, and apparently getting ready to up the ante with more stringent sanctions going forward. It's pretty clear we don't know why any of this is going on. We don't know what's in our best interest one way or the other, but we just feel like we need to be involved everywhere. You know, we're so used to being the world's policeman, being the most powerful country and having a say in whatever goes on in the world that we can't break the habit, even though Ukraine is right on Russia's border. And it contains Russia's most important naval base. So if anything, it's their problem, and it's they have the right to decide what happens over there if anybody does. It would be like somebody else intervening in Mexico and trying to create a Mexican government that's not favorable to the U.S. We would never permit this, and Russia's in that situation with the Ukraine, and so all these analogies to World War I, where countries just kind of blundered into a bigger and bigger war by trying to help out people that they thought they should help out without really understanding the ramifications of what they were doing. It's pretty apt. We need to be really careful here that sanctions don't escalate into something a lot more serious and then pull China into it and Japan and then the rest of Europe. We don't want that at all costs. We don't want that.
Yeah, I just don't get what we're doing there. It's like we're like the nosy neighbor in the neighborhood who's got to know what everyone is doing there, who just has no business sticking their nose into everyone else's business. And we have no interest there. And I was talking with Ned Schmidt, probably one of the most knowledgeable agricultural commodity analysts in the world, individual. Okay, obviously there's companies and there's brokerage houses out there who have whole departments, but for an individual analyst, newsletter writer, this guy knows more than just about anybody. 40% of Africa's grains pass through those ports, Sevastopol and the other port, which name eludes me right now. 50% of the Middle East's grains pass through there. You want to start a war? You want to see mass starvation in Africa and the Middle East? Play around there a little bit. Start saber rattling there and start provoking a megalomaniac like Putin, who I do believe shares many of Obama's fine personality traits, and then provoke an incident. You're going to see major die-offs in those continents, subcontinents, Arabia Peninsula, cut off those food supplies where you know that the world food situation is really kind of stretched right now, and cut off the Ukraine grain exports, you're going to see some major problems here, John.
Yeah, well, we're a really highly interconnected world, Kerry. Trouble anywhere is trouble everywhere anymore. And with Ukraine, it's also the case that a huge amount of energy flows through from Russia to Europe. So it's an energy hub as well as being an agricultural hub. And so, trouble there is a big deal for the rest of the world. And not even militarily necessarily, just economically. So I think that it's in everybody's interest just to tone this thing down and not let it escalate. And that's almost certainly what's going to happen. The worst case scenario is that the country breaks in half. Part of it goes to, becomes part of Russia. And who cares from an American standpoint? How does this matter? Especially since the Crimea, the part of the country that's mostly Russian, wants to join Russia. It's in the perceived interest of the people who live in that part of the world to do what it is they're doing right now. So it's no skin off anybody's nose other than what's left of the Ukraine. And, saying goodbye to a bunch of ethnic Russians probably in the long run for them is not that big of a deal. So the idea that we would escalate and risk some kind of military confrontation with Russia over this is just insane. It's just it's this weird atavistic reflex that we still have, where we have to be involved in places that we don't understand and really don't have that much of an interest in. So hopefully they end up with some kind of a unified government where the Ukraine stays intact and you've got people of all persuasions coming together to form a cabinet and to elect somebody that's acceptable to them as prime minister, and things go on. So that's the best case scenario, and hopefully that's what we see, because nobody in the world wants a confrontation there. Or in the South China Sea between China and Japan, or anywhere else really. We've got a lot of hot spots out there, and all of them, any of them, could turn into something a lot more serious, and it's in absolutely nobody's best interest for that to happen, other than people who are completely invested in precious metals. Gold and silver really spike in times of this kind of craziness. And, if somebody owns a lot of gold and silver, that's not the way I would like to get rich, because the world in which your gold and silver is very expensive is a terrible world to live in. So I'd rather have it happen just through the natural evolution of all the paper that's been created being converted into precious metals in an orderly fashion, and then us going back to some kind of a universal gold standard where everybody has to live under the same monetary regime and it's a reasonable one and yada, yada. I'd like to have it happen that way, not via some huge war that spreads around the world and cuts off food supplies and energy supplies and everything else, and we're really in danger of that second scenario if we aren't careful here, because there are just too many people expressing too many opinions that they shouldn't have in the first place. And hopefully cooler heads are going to prevail, and this will calm down, and things will go back to quote unquote normal, the normal monetary chaos that we've kind of guaranteed ourselves instead of some kind of military thing.
Yeah, you know what they say about opinions, but John, it's all Russian to me anyway, this foreign policy thing. Never quite understood it anyway, how it all works. Law of unintended consequences.
We shouldn't have to have opinions about this stuff because it's none of our business over here on the other side of the world, It's just not something that we should have to pay attention to.
Yeah, isolationism. Supposedly World War I was the justification for the United States to stick its nose in everybody's business, because if only we had been more proactive, World War I would have never happened. And actually, that was a false argument. If only we had been more isolationistic, we would have never gotten involved in World War I in the first place, and Europe would have worked out its own stuff, and World War II would have never happened. That's the fact of the matter here, John, right?
Yeah, so much of today's world can be traced back to a guy shooting an Austrian archduke. You know, if he had missed, if those bullets had just gone somewhere else, then World War I wouldn't have happened. World War II wouldn't have happened because it was directly traced to World War I. The Soviet Union would have never happened. Israel wouldn't have been necessary because Europe's Jews would have stayed in Europe and thrived there. And, you know, so much of today's world just wouldn't have happened. The Middle East would be a much more placid place right now. You know, a lot of today's troubles can be traced back to a couple of bullets flying in a certain direction, and the mistakes that flowed from that. So yeah, you know, revisionist history is interesting and of course imprecise. It's just speculation, but I think it's very safe to say that we don't want to repeat the mistakes that caused that century to be so chaotic. And you know, it's a 100-year anniversary of the shooting of the Austrian Archduke.
Yeah.
So
Duke Ferdinand and his wife.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of symmetry that we really wouldn't like to see in our time. You know, we don't want to repeat those mistakes, and hopefully we've learned a lesson.
We'll repeat the mistakes.
We're repeating an awful lot of mistakes of the past, but you know, we have a chance not to repeat this batch, and hopefully we're wise enough to do that.
Hopefully, I wouldn't. Well, it's just that, you know, John, before World War I, the U.S. really didn't have much of a standing army. And the reason the U.S. entered the war so late, fortuitously, was because of the lack of a standing army, the fact that so much of resources had to be mobilized, and men had to be mobilized and trained, and an army marshaled and shipped over to Europe. And then right away, we didn't learn anything from trench warfare that the Europeans spent, 3 years learning. All these things went wrong. All these men got killed unnecessarily because we didn't listen to them. But we're going to talk more about that up next on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com.
The Financial Survival Network.
Do you have Medicare or health insurance through your employer? If so, listen up. The healthcare reform wasn't written to save the healthcare industry or even to lower healthcare costs. Shoot, it isn't even designed to insure the uninsured. It's just a temporary political byproduct. Like a flat rock you step on in a swiftly moving stream, Obamacare is just a means to an end. Want to learn more about Obama's ultimate objective? Then you'll want to review our latest research presentation found on oclies.com. In it, a health expert and industry insider explains what you think you know about caring for your health is about to drastically change in 2014. Plus, he details the simple steps you could take to save thousands of dollars per year in health costs. It's free for you to preview at oclies.com. Don't waste time. What you don't know about the healthcare reform could hurt you and your family.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back with John Rubino of dollarcollapse.com on the Financial Survival Network. So John, we're really entering this time of major increased instability in the world and repeating these mistakes of yesteryear. Maybe we'll enter into a hot war, maybe we won't, but clearly, things are not going well here. I mean, what do you see happening here?
Oh, Kerry, I have no idea. The world is so interconnected, and so many countries seem to think they have an interest in places where they really don't, and are willing to involve themselves in it. But who knows what's going to happen? This is a time that I think the best word to describe this decade is chaotic, because there's so much going on that really shouldn't happen, and so many people who really shouldn't be in positions of power who do have power and who don't understand it, don't know how to use it. And so, heck, who knows what's going to happen here? And, like I said in the previous segment, I just hope that we don't make any horrendous mistakes here, because, the part of the world that is now blowing up is incredibly important. And, it's got energy flowing through it. It's important agriculturally. It's got a lot of military issues involved in it. And so lots can go wrong there. So hopefully everybody is just calm and rational and nothing blows up. But who knows? There's really no way to tell what's going on. I really don't trust the people in charge anywhere because it doesn't seem like anybody's operating with a clear sense of humility. Yeah. Everybody thinks they have more power than they really do. And they're acting as if they can decisively affect events when they really can't. So who knows? This is the geopolitical equivalent to modern central banking, where you've got these big central banks out there that think they can affect events and think they can shape the world in their image when they really can't. They're just blundering in the dark right now, doing experimental things that they don't really understand, and the consequences of which they can't predict. And yet they feel like it's their job to try, to involve themselves and try to bring some kind of an outcome into reality that their bosses have asked them to try to create, and they have no idea really how to do it, but they're going to try. And so we've got people doing political things that is the equivalent of quantitative easing, and
great analogy, John.
Yeah,
great analogy.
And it's terrifying because these guys do have a lot of power, but they don't have understanding of their power, because there really is no way to understand in this world what these big policy experiments are going to lead to. So that leaves you and I with no real ability to predict the future, other than to say it's going to be messy, because mistakes are being made. We don't know the extent of the mistakes. They look pretty serious. And we don't know what tomorrow's mistakes will be, but they're liable to be serious too, based on the immediate past. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't even venture a guess about how the Ukraine turns out, or how modern monetary policy turns out. It just looks like it's going to be messy, and all we can do is just protect ourselves.
Great point.
And our families, and just simplify our lives, try not to have too much debt, try not to be too dependent on the big systems out there, and invest in real assets instead of financial assets, and then try to weather the storm. And when things get rational again, then we'll have capital, and we can do something with it in a more rational world.
And that is a great point. And speaking of systems and the government trying to regulate things they don't understand, we see what's happening now with Bitcoin, because New York State's Department of Financial Services, also known as the NYDFS, announced that it would begin taking applications for regulated digital currency exchanges. And the move comes less than 2 months after a series of public hearings in which Bitcoin leaders spoke before the state regulators, outlining the potential economic benefit of embracing virtual currencies and the need for any future regulation to foster rather than hamper innovation. So effectively, these Bitcoin leaders are asking for regulation. So this is a case where a market's growing, and the leaders of that innovation revolution are saying, come regulate us so that we will become the leaders and we can keep out the competition. Isn't this beautiful?
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, they want to be recognized as money. They want their digital currency to be seen as something that's not essentially a criminal enterprise, which is how a lot of governments view Bitcoin right now. And so the question is a digital currency still a tool for freedom if it's regulated by state governments and national governments, and the rules are different in different countries? And the second question is that even possible? Something that operates over the internet. Is it possible for New York State government to somehow regulate it without regulating the internet itself? And who knows? These are technical questions that haven't yet been answered. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for these digital currencies to be regulated is still up in the air too. And whether regulation will allow them to compete on an even playing field with national currencies, and whether that's a good thing or bad thing for national currencies or digital currency. We don't know any of this yet, but it's evolving in a hurry here. When you think just 2 years ago, Bitcoin was, what was it then, $5 per coin or something like that? It was an incredibly low price.
Trace Mayer came up to us and approached us, and it was $5. And I think I had a few $1,000s in my pocket when I had lunch with him in New York, and said, buy this stuff. And say, what is this Bitcoin crap? I just don't have time for it. And here it is. It's $623 as we're talking today on St. Patty's Day, March 17th, 2014. And, he's a genius. And you and I are dummies, John, right?
Yeah. We could have been Bitcoin millionaires just by being polite to Trace and tossing him a few $1,000s.
Yeah, big deal.
We didn't have to reject him,
Right.
And I actually thought about it. I thought, wow, he's sitting right here, and he's a great guy, and he's buying me lunch, and I should do this. I should just give him a couple $1,000, and if it doesn't work out, so be it. It's a gesture. And I didn't do it. God.
Yeah.
A couple $1,000 at the time would have been a million or so at today's prices.
Yeah, Section 10 of the Constitution denies states the right to coin or to print their own money. So I just wonder if New York State really has the right to regulate, digital money, because it's interstate commerce. I mean, where does New York State get off saying we're going to license? I guess they have the right to license money changers like currency exchanges, but digital currency exchanges, I just wonder if they have it. They're just going ahead and doing it. There's a case, McCullough versus Maryland, which ruled that the Second Bank of the United States and the banknotes it issued on behalf of the federal government were constitutional. I don't think any bank can issue banknotes on behalf of a state. I don't know. I am uneasy. I think that you could go out and issue digital currency, and I don't think any state could stop you from it. Murray Rothbard always used to give an example. If I wanted to go issue currency called Rothbards, and people wanted to accept Rothbards, nobody could stop them from doing it. That was his argument on behalf of alternative currencies. Murray was ahead of his time, because now I think he could probably get a lot of libertarians accepting Rothbards if he were alive today. His problem was he didn't live long enough, John,
That's a problem for a lot of people, Kerry. But one thing that you're kind of getting at here is that for up and coming lawyers, digital currency law is probably going to be a growth field. So, all you guys in law school out there, and wondering how you're going to feed your family after you get out of law school, that might be something to think about, because this is going to be a field that's in transition for a long time. It's going to take a while for it to really coalesce into accepted legal structures. So it would be fun to be somebody who gets involved in shaping that whole process.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we hit upon something: digital currency rights and transactions, the ability to issue, your rights to privacy, a whole bunch of things. I think you aspiring lawyers, if you really feel honor bound to become a lawyer, and I would advise you against it. And
as a lawyer, right?
As a lawyer and an advisor, unless you have a love of the law and you think you want to be the next Clarence Darrow or, next Chief Justice, Learned Hand. Well, he was never the Chief Justice, but he should have been. Unless you have this love for the law, don't do it. Okay. That's what I would advise. If you have a love of the law, do it. Otherwise, don't, or it fits into your business strategy, then do it. But John, you hit upon a brilliant thing that, if you really want to be in the law, specialize in digital currency and rights. I think you'll be employed for life and be an expert in it, because you couldn't pick better than that. And even there was a case, Briscoe versus Bank of Kentucky, that state banks and the notes they issued were also constitutional. you can go back, you can become an expert in digital currency and rights, and you can really go places. So, John, your book, where do we get it? Your website, can we get it on your website, by the way?
Sure. The book is The Money Bubble, co-written with Gold Money's James Turk. Go to dollarcollapse.com. That's the quickest way to order it.
Hey, and don't forget, go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, link to John's site there. Sign up for the damn newsletter. I've got a great article coming out today about dirty money. And I'm not talking about money, ill-begotten gains. I'm talking about the filthy currency that they're passing out now, all part of the game. John, talk to you next week. You be well.
Thanks, Kerry. You too.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.